Okay, we are on the air. Welcome to our September 17th work session. And we start off with Jen Garbely, our engineer, talking to us about the CIP projects.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to stand up because most of the presentation is all over here and it's easier to talk and being able to see it. So we've got a lot, but if you do have questions, please go ahead and answer them or ask them while we're on that page. I don't want you to wait till the end because there's probably about 15 slides. So, but we do need to be efficient so we can stay on time. Okay, first project, ADA ramps improvements. I just want to say we completed it. It's been done. We received a grant from the county, $145,000, and then we supplemented it with a little bit of our dollars. We completed 12 ramps and built the sidewalk in front of Johnson Creek Ops building to the intersection.
Do you just keep a list of where the ramp, I mean, we know we have hundreds of ramps that are out of compliance or whatever, right? Or places that don't have ramps. Do you just like pick the next 12 or however many you have money for, or how do you determine? Or is it a geographic area?
First of all, it was locations that just needed like really a ramp repair. They were outdated ramps, basically non-compliant that we picked. So yes, we have a list, and yes, we're just kind of working through them. Try to group them within, relatively close together, so you have good mobilization, efficiency for construction. So yeah, one done. All right, here's our 2024 street maintenance. So our crack and slurry seal project completed, 6 miles of slurry seal put down, and then 2 miles of grind and inlay. Both those projects signing off this month as completed and finalized. The great part was both under budget from a bidding standpoint. We got really good bids. We were expecting about 1,200 1.2 million for the paving project. It was 900 and something. So we are getting good bids, which is quite excellent. And so our numbers are also looking pretty good as far as when we're going out for things.
Is it good bids? Are other cities experiencing that as well, or?
Not always.
Okay.
I would say we're getting better bids than other cities because people like to work for Milwaukie. So we've got some great contractors that just really enjoy coming back. So we're seeing repetitive contractors coming back.
And can you say, we hear that from time to time, and is that just because you're on top of the projects and so they know, there's not a lot of changes, we don't come back at them? Why do they like to work for Milwaukie?
Why do they like working for Milwaukie? I would say I have a culture of bringing a partnership. I like to have contractors be on same board as my team. It's not you versus them. It is we are a team and we need to get this project done. So we are working to, first of all, provide them as quick information as they can to keep them moving forward. That's the worst thing for a contractor if they can't actually keep doing their job. If they get delayed or stalled, that costs them money. They have to move their crew elsewhere. So we have fast responses and we pay typically much faster than other communities. I try to go between 2 weeks and 1 month. They are getting paid for the previous month. Other places have 90 days. So I try to do better in that. And then great communication. So communication's 2 ways. And so we try to be obviously respectful towards each other. For the most part, when you can build that relationship, it goes a long ways.
Can I stop? Good job, Jim. I can speak a little bit to this as well, because it's true that there is a relationship and a partnership component that Jen has done a great job at versus previous city engineers. Like, she's actually done such a good job in helping them feel like we're both part of the project versus you work for us and you have to get this done, and making it a little bit contentious at times. So I just want to give you a shout out for that.
I also give them a heads up when projects are coming out. So that's why we're getting multiple bids coming when we put a project out. So I say, hey, I've got a project coming up. If you're interested, you should check it out. So 2-way conversation. Always And we want to keep those, I like working repetitive with the contractors that do a good job for us, so. All right, Washington area improvements. 27th is done. We made it before school started. Got the paving and all the concrete work. We have a little bit down at 27th, but that's because it's right there touching Washington. And we're gonna start making our way up Washington. So super exciting. This contractor, Landis and Landis, they are really great about communicating to the community. So I don't know about you, I'm not getting a ton of calls. I don't think you're getting a ton of calls that things are going awry, and if there is a call that comes in, they're on it right away. So it's been fantastic. We are expecting though, the culvert, I switched out the design and instead of replacing the entire culvert, we slip lined it. Mainly because of risk. I got really nervous. It's on a steep embankment. Opening that up, I felt could cause more issues. So we did the math, looked at some calculations, and slip lining it was adequate and sufficient. We weren't actually needing to upsize the culvert. We were just doing it because we were putting in a new pipe at that time. So it's the same basically diameter of the existing because it's a different material.
So that's under Washington. And is that near that water wheel?
Yes.
Okay, property.
Which is also a historic spot, which made me really nervous. We're working the slope bankments, old concrete, we would have destroyed that. I don't think we had the budget to even prepare for that. So switched that out, talked with Public Works. They agreed. They first wanted it pipe burst, and I said, I can't do that. It's a corrugated pipe in there that's starting to fail, but we can slip line it with an HDPE. It went.
That's a pretty significant drop from the mill down to
Yeah.
the other side of the Spring Creek there.
Correct. So we're on time and on budget for this project. We're actually a little ahead because that culvert crossing costs less by slip lining it. So we're saving some money in some storm water, which is fantastic. So we are looking probably spring for completing this project. They actually technically can take till next October, but they want to get in and out as quickly as possible. But with winter approaching, we're going to work through as much as we can, but we're probably going to have a final paving that's going to happen next spring, is what I'm anticipating. Okay, me. This is my hard one. I've been working on this project since I started over 7 years ago. So we've been delayed. We've been delayed for the last 6 months due to the railroad. They need special reviews after you get into construction, and they have special flaggers. We just got all of the works products approved, and now we're starting back up. We only have this section. Oh! It's not working.
It's up on the screen.
Okay. This section right here is all we have to do, right there. All of this has been built. So it's all what's in the right of way of the railroad.
So the drainage is going north.
Yes,
Okay.
to Roswell facility. Correct. It feels odd, doesn't it? But it is going north. It is going north. So it's going to Roswell. The hardest part about this is we're looking at a large change order. We're doubling the time that it's going to take to install this pipeline per the railroad's new plans, which means also the flaggers are also going to be double the expense of that. And they're
Are
more.
flagging the actual trains?
Yes.
That's what they're flagging?
We have to stop work every time a train goes by.
Okay.
So those flaggers are trained on how to signal the crew when to stop, when to pick back up again. They have to be on site the entire time until we're done.
Because there's no street
Constructing.
crossings.
Nope.
Yep.
This is all train, all train. So the worst case scenario, I'm looking at a $2 million change order, potentially. We are working as hard as we can to reduce that. I feel like that's the most we're gonna see. Even the contractor's like, if we can do this faster, we will do it faster. But right now, it looks like this is the worst. I asked them for the worst case scenario. So I'm giving you that heads up now. I will be back for a change order. The worst case scenario is $2 million. But I'm hoping to bring that in less, best I can. So we'll see. Any other questions? The public has been notified of the delay and that we're starting back up this month. If it does take as long as the contractor thinks it might take, we're not going to be done until next spring. So
What's the contingency on this?
I think I have a $400,000 contingency on it,
So is the 2 million potentially in addition?
possibly,
Using all of that?
possibly. I'm going to assume that's my worst case scenario is 2 million on top of that. Yeah. But we're going to get it done. We're going to build it. And then I'm going to throw a party. Okay, any other questions on me? Okay. Ardenwald North Improvements. It's going out to bid this month. We are so close. So it's getting prepped. Kelly's got her review for the new bonfire system, for the new bid process, and it's going to happen. So Josh is running that project, and we are super excited. So we're doing a bunch of water work, a bunch of sewer work. That is ARPA dollars, so we'll be finalizing those ARPA dollars. We've got some storm. We've got a bunch of old networks in this neighborhood. And then we're building the shared road kind of concept with a mountable curb that'll still have parking on the side. Couple ramps, because we're touching 32nd at Roswell. That'll be updated. I'm also expecting some good bids. We are going to go low bid on this, but I know there's some contractors that said they're a little hungry for work. So I'm excited. Downtown sidewalk and storm. This is the small little project that's right there in front of the Collector's Mall. It's on that side. It's not even the full block because some of it has been repaired already. There's a business down there. It is taking out the trees. We are trying a new product. It's using Silva cells. The idea of these Silva cells is it makes a larger tree well for the trees. And so you put it all underneath the sidewalk. The sidewalk then is a pervious concrete. Water trickles through there and waters the tree. The tree roots then, the Silva cells hold up that sidewalk and they can branch through that Silva cell, meaning they don't have to stay within a 4x4 tree well block. So we're testing this because in the future, we might want to do some additional, as we have additional money through our URA to look at Main Street. It will have new trees, so those trees are gone. And it went to AKS to design because first of all, we didn't have capacity in-house to do it. And it was a little bit more stormwater work that needed to be picked up because you don't want that water just sitting down there. So if too much water filters through, it's going to collect and meet into our stormwater system and then out to the creek.
So Jen, these larger areas, that looks like a solid surface rather than a grate?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's impervious.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the tree still has a little bit of
Yeah,
a
I would
space
imagine
as far
it
as
would.
that goes. But all the concrete will then be pervious to allow water.
Just gives you more
More space.
water and more
Yeah.
root room. Yeah, it's good.
For sure. Any other questions, Mayor?
Well, that one is clear to me now, because I knew that, back when Steve Adams was here, he talked to us about that. Is there other downtown stuff to talk about?
There is. I mean, as far as the fact that we have money to do it, I just haven't had capacity to organize it and assign it to somebody to move it forward. So at this point, it's just not on the books as far as what's happening and what's going on. But we do have funds to do it. And I think we need to decide if we're patching it or starting from one side and working our way up. But I think there's some options there. So more discussions need to happen on what that downtown needs to look like. A lot needs to happen. I don't think we have enough money to do all of it, is where I need to assess.
Have you written the medallions, Jen? Did those get installed?
Yeah, no. Okay, so this project, they're getting installed. They're here. Public Works has them. So we have medallions going in, and this has been about 3 years. So I'm excited. The medallions are going to go at Washington and Maine. The three corners, there's 4. It'll go in with coho when coho goes in. So we have them.
And they're metal.
They're bronze.
Yeah, they're bronze.
They're bronze.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Easier to replicate, and hopefully, I'm hoping they're not going to be as they'll be slip-free, so that's probably not a word. But okay. Monroe Greenway. All right, we had an awesome turnout at our open house on September 12th. We had over 100 people show up. I think the biggest thing I want to say about this is we had a lot of people that are in support of this project. And we have a few people that are not in support of this project. So what I need from you is, this project has been in the works for over 10 years. And I've definitely got people that are like, no, they do not want the project. However, we have gone down this path and we've gotten funding. And so I need your support to make sure that we're keeping moving this forward. Any questions?
Yeah, I went to the event. It was awesome. Actually, it was a great turnout. Couple of the concerns that I heard that, and again, let us know what you need and we'll back this up. 'Cause I know this has been a long time coming. And I live in this area, so obviously I'm all for it. We walk to the park all the time. But somebody had mentioned that they were going to lose about a foot of their property. It's like their private property. Is that
Nope.
okay?
We are building the
I didn't
project
think-
100% in the right of way.
That's what I thought. Thank you for confirming that. And then one question was about the diversion to not go, you see the alternate location. I know that the reason was more out of safety, right? Just because of the cars, the alternate route.
So we are actually going that route.
We are going that
We
way.
are going Garrett. We are going Garrett. I'm sorry, I didn't have time to update this picture, but the route we are actually proposing right now is Washington 37th, up Garrett to 44th on Monroe to Linwood.
So the alternate route is the actual route that's going to be.
I'm sorry, what was that?
That dotted line is the actual.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
In addition, we have definitely recognized, we've been working on this project for about 3 years now. It took a long time to get our IGA. So inflation has definitely hit us. There's additional RAFA funds that we're applying for this project. So it's due October 6th, I believe, and we're gonna try. We're gonna try to see if we can get some additional funds, which means there's a gap on Monroe from, I think, the church to 44th. I would love to get sidewalk installed to complete that. I would love to do a complete grind and inlay on this project so we have fresh pavement, fresh markings, and can clearly define where this route is going. So we'll see. We'll see what we get.
I know in the past we've talked about connecting 29th to Monroe. Did we ever finalize a route that was a connector between the two, especially considering that?
There is a route. Part of it is Harvey. Harvey's one of the next projects that we'll talk about. But so
Okay.
there's some work to get all the way to Monroe. So we're
I'm
Taking
talking
it
about
off.
the one that goes near Railroad, if you remember.
Yeah, Brett Kelver kind of led a process for central Milwaukee, how we were connecting.
yes, we have the issue at 32nd and Harrison.
Yeah.
Right. What are we going to do at the intersection? Which we want a grant to start looking at Harrison.
Huh,
So
okay.
it's just going to take a little time
Okay.
to get there, but we'll be considering all those things.
Okay. The reason I ask is I know in the past, when we think about the Murphy site and other sites there, to have a plan approved, they have to kind of build around that. Do we have a plan approved, I guess? Or is there a route, not a plan, sorry, is there a route that we've already indicated? Or is that
So-
something we have?
Murphy site, I have basically a signed agreement and kind of like easement set up that they have to provide the bike passage along 32nd. So there
Along
is.
32nd,
Yeah.
not the extension of 29th, if there is one.
So if I can jump in, Jim, that's all going to be part of the hillside.
Yes.
Coming down. And then there is, as I understand it, Mayor, and I think you're probably the one that was council. There was discussion about where that alignment would actually go. There's a few options, but I don't know if it was ever.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Exactly.
And that's what I was hoping.
Yeah.
Counselor Costerbody is probably on it too.
So that's a possible Llewellyn. Llewellyn cuts over, and then you could come down 34th, I believe, right here.
And so I guess my question is,
34th,
do
and then you
we-
would hop on here, potentially. That's a safer route.
Okay. Do we need to indicate a route now, or is that not something that's important?
I don't need an indication right now. I think it kind of just depends on what what developers and what happens at 32nd. Now that I got an actual grant to look at 32nd, there's a little bit of more of an opportunity to say, hey, we need to get bikes through here.
Yeah.
So I might be able to fix that intersection and then they just come up Railroad.
Okay.
Or we tie in the other one as well.
Okay. That's helpful.
So there's definitely some options,
Okay.
which we didn't have before.
Yeah.
Which is
That makes
great.
sense.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when the options that Joseph was alluding to, nobody really liked, none of them were fully satisfactory, I think, to council at the time. So there was a lot of hair pulling about, anyway. So
There's some challenges.
I hope there's some good opportunities.
Yeah, now that we have an opportunity to look at 32nd Avenue and that intersection, I think that opens up some more conversation because that's the whole part of the grant. How do we get ped and bikes safely through this corridor
Yeah.
and reduce crashes? So,
With the Central Monroe Greenway, we already have funding for that. We're just in the planning process now, and that goes from Railroad down to, what is that over there? It goes past
Right here.
24.
right here,
Okay. Okay.
just the other side of 224, basically. So we have state funds and we have URA funds to, and if we have leftover money like URA funds, then I can go a little further west, basically. So I'll do the most that we can. But we are starting design. Right now it's railroad. How do we get across the railroad? Railroad takes the longest to get approval. So right now we're getting a permit to just get the survey done. So we just got that permit. Survey should happen at Oak and 37th. I'm looking at the 37th crossing too.
Yeah. I know that's helpful. With 29th, we talked a lot about placemaking on our greenways. We have a lot of great greenway work that we're doing that we see in the CIP. What are some of the placemaking things that we're doing for Monroe? Or is there a conversation around a suite of options that we'll do to make it really noticeable that something is a greenway? I know Councilor Stavanger talked a lot about that in the 29th hearing.
Yeah, I mean, we are doing some of the features we're doing on 29th. Actually, I'm taking the green kind of box through the intersection so you could see the route. And so we're doing that all along this route. So from 37th here, down here through this intersection, that intersection, you will see green put down on the pavement. A few more signages that's happening.
Okay.
This project's getting a few more traffic calming speed cushions. We actually want to slow people down more so than we did on 29th. 29th actually has occasional speeders, but not real life speeding as far as the data goes.
So can I ask, I came to the open house, but I wasn't able to stay very long, and everybody was very busy, so I didn't get to ask any of my questions there, so I'm going to ask them now. What have we learned from the diverter at Linwood in terms of count reduction?
I don't have a number off the top of my head, but I do know it significantly has helped reduce traffic on Monroe. It was one of the main diverters we actually needed to install. I did have a pretty heated person that says, why are you installing this? But it is. We wanted to reduce traffic on Monroe and the other side of Monroe as well, because the county's just about to go out to bid on their project.
Are they?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they're ahead of us. So they've already completed design. It does seem like they're installing an RFB at that intersection as well. So there'll be a flashing RFB at Linwood and Monroe.
Oh, okay.
So they're doing that work and they're maintaining it, which I was happy about.
Okay. And then,
yeah.
Originally, the plan had talked about a diverter also at 37th or 42nd. And obviously that was when it was all coming down Monroe and not going over to Washington, but do you not think another diverter would be useful?
We don't need it at this time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why the Washington actually helps a lot. There's less traffic, less volumes on Washington, which is why that was picked.
And then, I don't expect you to have numbers, but tree removal, how much tree removal are we gonna see?
I am going for 0. At the
Really?
moment, I might have 1, but I am trying really hard.
Wow, well, good for you.
Yeah, we walked the corridor and I basically shifted the sidewalk to save any and every tree we could.
Yeah.
That's pretty strong roots we got right now is we're saving trees. So
I appreciate
yeah, 1 we might not be able to get away with, but I think I still might.
that.
So that's our number 1 priority is save trees.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we got a great bid. Our water line project came in at $167,000 to replace that water line. Engineer's estimate was over 200. So we're stoked. It's gonna probably happen in October. It's moving fast.
Will we get to see ODOT's plans for the 224 intersection?
I'm sure we can share them at some point. I'll ask the next meeting we have. So city does sit in, or I'll have Tanya ask maybe if I'm sending her. So she's taken over Monroe Greenway as the project lead. And is doing a great job, working hard. I hope I don't scare her. Any more questions on Monroe? Okay. Harvey Street improvements, it is moving fast. We just turned in 90% design review comments and they are moving 200%. So I do feel like this is gonna be probably after Ardenwald North, the next big project we're gonna be bidding out. I really liked doing best value. And so I would like to come back to you and talk about findings to do alternative delivery on Harvey and King Road for a best value.
So talk through what that
Yeah.
is. I mean,
So the great part about best value is we use all our same contracts. It's not a new contract, but the contractor has to submit qualifications. We have them put together a proposal of why they feel they are most qualified to do the job. We score that. It has a value of 35%. And then they have to turn in a bid schedule, and that's worth 65%. And so that bid schedule is what we typically just do. We only do the bid schedule, and whoever's the low bid is who we get. Well, with this qualification base, we get to, evaluate the contractors, and then whoever's got the best score is the winner.
Low bid is not always the cheapest route. So this is a good way of getting a good contractor involved.
So super happy how Washington has turned out and has been working. So I'd like to try it again. Do I have your support if I come back with the findings? Perfect. Any other questions on Harvey? Okay. King Road, we are gonna receive 90% drawings in October, so it is also coming. But it's just a little bit slower than Harvey, which is fine. We are working through those stormwater design elements that we decided we needed to reevaluate. It's looking great. I'm impressed with the design team came back with. Originally, they said a $4 million. I said, no, you got to cut that down. We're definitely within a $2 million design. And really, we're getting rid of our failing dry wells, which is exciting. Public Works is excited about that. So,
is that one gonna have another open house?
no,
No?
nope. We're at 90%. We'll have probably a, hey, construction starting party type of deal, but not another open house. We'll notify everybody of, hey, the final drawings, and we'll post those, and we'll start flyering out before construction starts. We still got a little time though. We got to get to 100%, and I got a bid. Bid process will probably take about 3 months, just in general.
So I mean, it's not all Milwaukie to Linwood, right?
Yeah.
Wichita Center is not in Milwaukie.
We own the roadway. The roadway is us.
Okay.
The Wichita Center, yes, on the outside, but the roadway is Milwaukie. Yeah. Till then what? We're working all within our right of way. The cool part about this project too is we're definitely updating our bus stops. So TriMet's pretty excited about the new bus stops and just where they're placed and just thoughtful thinking about safety and access.
Are we gonna have like actual shelters there?
Maybe, but I'm not gonna 100% guarantee that because that's on TriMet. But I thought there was something talk about definitely some improvements.
Well, this is the 33 line, because that's the
Yeah.
one they're doing something to expedite the,
Correct. I just sat in a meeting on that.
yeah.
So yes, they are actually very excited that and we got the grant. Okay. Waverly Heights. It's just moving along. Right now, they're working towards a 90% design. The biggest thing they're working on is we don't quite have all the easements weren't great. So we're nailing down those. They're too general. So we're nailing down easements, making sure everything's kind of set in stone, and it's just moving along. This is a sewer project up in Waverly Heights. We're getting a funding from Wes to pay for 33% of it. So we want to keep utilizing as much as we can of that ability with Wes. So anything that's reducing I&I, inflow and infiltration into our sewer pipelines. Okay, Waverly South and 26th Avenue improvements. This is a in-house project. They're both small. They're small projects, probably like around $1 million. And so I really wanted to do them in-house. We have some young engineers that love doing CAD and design, and so this is that opportunity. Because of short staffing, they haven't had a chance to quite jump into this, but it's coming soon. So 26 is started. It is off of Lake Road, south of Lake Road, and it's a sidewalk down to that apartment complex, and then we're paving the road. No sewer work.
So it has nothing to do with the dam disappearing and the creek restoration and
Nope.
there's some sewer line across the creek back, across the lake.
Has nothing to do with that.
Okay.
So, separate projects. Waverly South is some new ADA ramps, upsizing a water line. We have a 2-inch water line. Yes, it's getting upsized to a 4-inch, a minimum. Most of the time I don't go lower than 6, but it is a dead end. And then we're repaving. Repaving in this area, and it does have some deteriorated, so it'll be exciting. The survey just came in, so we're hoping to start jumping on that. I hope to have it out to bid next summer. It just kind of depends on staffing at this point.
Is there sidewalks being added to Lava Drive? I mean, the new apartment building is building one, right? But beyond that,
There is some gaps that are getting replaced, but not the whole thing. So I've got a gap of 80 foot that looks like it's sidewalk and ADA compliant ramps, but it's not the full distance. There is some sidewalk on that, so it's filling in the gaps. Okay. Stanley improvements. Okay, we're hoping to find out in October if we're gonna get our grant. Fingers are still crossed, right? You guys got your fingers crossed? Okay. The IGA just come back from the county, so we're really close to finalizing that and bringing that to you for approval. So I'd expect that in probably next month.
and, I mean, we've heard nothing from Safe Routes to School. It's just radio silence until they announce the awards. There's no
I have not heard a word.
questions or anything.
I have not heard a word.
Yeah.
And they got my name on the application.
Yeah.
So nothing's come my way. I think we just have to be a little patient. They were pretty clear that we wouldn't hear something until like October.
Okay.
It might even be November. But I think October is when we're expecting to hear something. Oh, Stanley Reservoir improvements. Okay, this is important because we're getting ready to drain the tank. So next week, we will be basically, we will be turning the Oh, I can't talk. We'll be turning the pump in the wellhead. What that'll allow us to do is to pump directly into the distribution system so we can still feed the distribution system from well 6. It does mean we're losing all of that storage from October until March. So if the water crew and Peter are a little nervous and the engineering group, yes, we're nervous because we're basically pulling offline half of our storage. But we're doing it in the winter because that's where we have less demand.
Well, I mean, we did the big tank, right?
The
Like 5 or
elevated-
6 years ago.
The elevated tank is only 1.5 million gallons. Stanley is 3.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Stanley is double.
Wow.
So Stanley is double. It is much needed work. So we are draining it. We are going to blast it. So you're going to hear some noise. We've got some public engagement happening, which is great. So a letter is going to be going out here quite soon. Some roof repair that's going to happen. Some seismic upgrades. They're going to coat that entire thing. And then once they bring that back online, they'll come and do the outside. So then also the outside will get painted. And yes, there is lead in some of this paint. So proper disposal is what's going to happen. But just so you're aware, it is happening very soon. Okay, and our water engineering services. So our first high priority is definitely well 8. We have our, we're starting to meet now bi-monthly. We're gonna meet bi-monthly, not weekly. I don't have time for that. But, so the crew is starting to analyze. And one of the methods they're using is, okay, what is all the work that needs to happen? So we're developing kind of what that work plan looks like. And then what is the funding resources out there that we can start targeting? And what kind of packages do they need? So we're gonna be constantly looking at, okay, what kind of work are we doing? And then what kind of funding can we get for that work so we don't miss any opportunities to go after grants or low interest loans or whatever we see fit to do this work. The next biggest issue is the PFAS kind of requirements that we're looking at. We got to be in compliant. Looks like 2029. That is fast. So we need to really jump on that piece of it as we do have some PFAS that has hit. So that's what we're looking at.
Well 8 is the one on Lake Road?
The one that's offline, I haven't actually physically been to it
Okay.
because it hasn't been running.
Okay.
But I think you're right. I think it is off of Lake Road. So we want to analyze that. First of all, can we clean it? Can we get production out of it? If no, then we need a whole new plan. And what does that look like? Because where are we going to drill a new well? And does that have PFAS, which may also need to be treated? So lots of things to start looking at and evaluating. Okay, so we got our SS4A grant. Now I need to find someone to do it. Yay! But I am super excited. This is one of our big crash areas, and this is going to prep us to go out for basically federal dollars to do all those improvements. So that's exciting. $400,000. We're putting $80,000 into it of our own money. This does mean I'm splitting the Logos 40th, 42nd project. So that no longer makes sense to keep that coupled because we're basically doing 42nd at Harrison and King as part of this project. So we're going to decouple that project out a little bit. We'll probably ended up actually doing that in-house maybe, design-wise. So I should have more on that soon. And then we're going to create this new project that needs to be added as a supplemental since we got this grant. So look out for that. We won an award for Linwood. So we submitted with the county as a joint submission to APWA Oregon chapter, and we are getting a transportation award for it in October.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yeah. And then we are losing Jennifer Backus. So engineering staff, as of Friday, will be down 3 positions. We are interviewing. We're interviewing. So we'll see. But we are down 3. So just remember, we are short-staffed. So we are trying the best we can, but it is a lot.
And Jennifer's probably one of the people who's been here the longest, yeah?
She does. She has me by, I think, 6 months or a year. So, yeah.
She worked on the original safe, I remember.
She did, yeah. Okay, that's all I got. What other questions?
Questions?
That was a lot.
We did it in time. I didn't go over my time, so
It's okay.
Under budget, under time.
this is how engineering rolls.
You drop.
Except for make, we're working on make.
Put you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah.
That was actually not an intentional pun, but you're gonna get it in a second. Is there an update on the spot program?
Oh,
You're
yeah.
down 3 engineers, leave with that. Down 3 engineers.
I don't have an update at this time because Jeff is not here. He is sick tonight. He's leading that effort, so I forgot to ask him.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll get an update and we'll.
Yeah.
How about 29th? Like, are you hearing feedback from neighbors? Are we doing any speed monitoring, et cetera? Joe, just nodding.
I've heard positive remarks as far as the markings that have gone down and all the treatments that we have installed. So I think that's positive, and then we're using them. I mean, we're using that same kind of concept in other parts of our greenways. So I think that's exciting. I have not actually run any more data since I've done that, but that would be a good thing to put in there. And usually I want it to like settle for about 6 months. So I'd like it to, be fully installed for 6 months, and then you kind of run the data, because then people have used it for 6 months, and that usually gives you better data.
We do have a speed camera now installed at Boyd
Ooh,
and 29th. And the data looks like this, like the Matrix.
Nice.
I'm not going to sit here and try to interpret that, but that our PD put that section, so that data I think comes every 2 weeks. So yeah, that's not as comprehensive as a formal, like traffic study, but we've got data, and I think as the settling happens, we can kind of crunch back through that time.
Yeah.
We've got it. So.
I think PD also told me they're getting a few more, so we might be placing a few more of those around the community. So I've got a couple spots that people are like, that would be good.
Well, I would just remind people that we're using these only for data collection. We're not using them for enforcement.
No.
No.
Okay, there's no tickets being written off of any of this stuff.
Nope.
So just a reminder.
Yeah, data collection and education, because it tells you how fast
You're
you're
going.
as you're driving down the street.
There's one in a country that if you're going the correct speed, it gives you a smiley face.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
I thought that was cute.
It's like an angry face if you're going fast.
Yeah.
It's like a frown. That's pretty cool.
To Lisa's question about 29th, I do think that there's more placemaking work that I'd like to talk about or consider on our greenways. Like, I think the problem that I see a lot, someone who bikes frequently from my house down to City Hall here on a greenway, like, people just don't know when they're on a greenway or what that is. I look at maps a lot, and I can't even tell you 100% sure if Harvey's a greenway or not. And it's those types of things. Like, I think as we are designing so many greenways and developing them, to have a thought about like maybe how we could plug our spot program in or other like really inexpensive is I think the key word, interventions that we could do. So
Yeah.
if you're driving, it's inescapable. You know what a greenway is and you know what the rules are. And maybe that's a work session that we could have in the future to have a longer conversation about that. Maybe we could even bully Jeff to come in. Let's see what that looks like.
Sure. I think that's a great idea.
Well, and I wonder, we had, we created with some amount of fanfare, like 7 or 8 years ago, this process for painting intersections. We had 2 intersections painted, one on 29th or Sherritt in Island Station, and they both were on less than great roads, and so they really disintegrated pretty quickly and needed to be repainted like every year, basically. I don't know if you painted on a more recently paved road, would the paint hold up, or would you still have to be repainting every year or two?
Paint's hard. It doesn't last nearly as long. So when we put down the green, it's thermoplastic, and that does last longer. So that is reality.
I would also, just as a former P-botter, advocate for everyone looking up their Bike to Books program. So every year they partner with schools that are along greenways. Kids design little cute things that can go on the Sparrows. And so it'll be like a jellyfish riding a bike. And they
that's
do that
cute.
with the thermoplastic and it lasts.
Yeah.
Long. It's very cool.
Cool.
So, go for it.
I was just gonna say thank you.
Yeah.
That's great information.
To that request or that suggestion by Councilor Anderson that we have a work session about greenway placemaking. Do I see it nods or a potential second to get that on the calendar?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get that scheduled.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey,
And again,
You're welcome.
now it's the Joseph Show. Sparrow site and construction excise tax. I guess we're going into Sparrow site first.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Joseph Brilio, Acting Assistant City Manager, Community Development Director. We're going to talk a little bit about Sparrow here in a few moments, but I wanted to reintroduce. I don't know if you haven't seen Mandy Bird in a while, but Mandy Bird, our Development and Project Manager, our Development Project Manager. This is often, we call it City Hall, but I also call it the house that Mandy built. So she also hates having the spotlight on her, so sorry about that. But I'll let you jump into it, Mandy.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Mandy Bird, Development Project Manager. And tonight, or today, I guess it's not quite night yet, we're gonna dive into the Sparrow property. And before we start the discussion on the goals, I was just gonna go through kind of a summary of the context and the background of the site, since people probably have various levels of familiarity. So first of all, we've got this kind of overview of the site, which is made up of two different parcels. The first parcel is lot 300, is the main lot, was purchased by the city in 2019. And the second parcel is what we call the auxiliary lot, 5100, and it was purchased from TriMet in 2022. Both of these properties are located in the Island Station neighborhood, adjacent to the trolley trail and the Max Orange Line. And the next slide, I'm going to talk about some of the constraints of the site, because I think that's kind of important context as we dive into the goals later. So we have kind of a dense slide here with constraints, but the first thing on the list is the question of density. While the site is zoned moderate density residential, and while the middle housing code did help with density potential quite a bit, it will still be sort of up to the developers to determine the maximum number of units they could feasibly fit on the site and still be able to financially pencil. Secondly, we've got the fact that the site is a brownfield due to past uses by ODOT and then by TriMet for equipment and construction staging that happened on the site. We've got phase 1 and 2 analyses that have been completed back in 2018 showing the soil contamination, which includes metals and petroleum. Therefore, as a condition of the purchase agreement, when the city bought the property, a remediation plan and actual mitigation will be required prior to development. Lastly, the city did conduct an access study in 2021, which showed that right-of-way improvements would be needed in order to access the site for public services. Specifically, 26th Avenue is not adequate for fire life safety, and I can show you a good illustration of that here. As shown in the map, 26th Avenue sort of dead ends right into that green blob, which is the auxiliary lot. And that's a big reason why the city purchased that property, so that ultimately we can connect 26th Avenue through there without crossing private property over to the Sparrow Street and the Sparrow site. Here's, yeah.
Going back to your challenges, one more, or one more slide back with the RMD versus RHD. What is the distinction there? How would changing it to RHD help a project pencil? Because we see RHD is across the street and there are other parts of the neighborhood that are zoned RHD. And so can you walk me through maybe why you say it would be a challenging process, or if the juice is worth the squeeze, I guess what the juice is?
Yeah, good question, Counselor. So I believe that when this was first proposed back many years ago, before the middle housing code was in place, is that doing a spot zone and doing an upgrade and upzone of HD would be challenging to make the findings for that, even though it's across the street, yes. And so at that point, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, I wasn't here. Council was like, well, we can wait for the middle housing code because that's going to help us get the density that's needed. The big difference between the MD and the HD is multifamily. That's the big change. And so the middle housing code was going to help us get more density, but not at a multifamily type of apartment complex. Standard. That's the main difference, the density and also the type of housing that's available.
And can you explain, I'm newer to all of this. I've not sat on the planning commission, but the spot zone process, or like to change one property from one zone type to another, what is that process, or what's the challenge there?
Yeah, so just making the findings for the reason why it makes sense for that one zone versus the entire neighborhood. That's typically difficult just because you're basically saying this is such an important site.
Okay.
For whatever reasons, it's a challenge to make that stretch.
Okay.
So it's more just finding related. That's challenging there.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so this is a shot of the site, just to kind of illustrate the relatively flat grade across the center there. It also has quite a bit of slope to the east and to the west, and then, of course, old growth trees and vegetation. This explains why the overall site size is around 2 acres, while only about a little over 1 acre of it is developable. So with all of this information, here's what a potential timeline could look like depending on how council wishes to proceed. Once the project goals are confirmed and if an RFQ, request for qualifications or request for proposals is the direction we're headed, staff could potentially release that solicitation later this year and have a selection process and design taking us through 2025 with construction following in 2026. So now we come to the development goals that are the original goals. I can run through each of these and then we can go into a discussion. So the first goal was for affordable housing. We've got a couple of different levels of affordability here in the text. Goal 2 had to do with the unit mix, encouraging 2 and 3 bedroom sized units. Goal 3 was for minority and women businesses to be included in the contracting. Goal 4 was to preserve the tree canopy on site. Number 5 was to include sustainability in the design. Goal 6 is for affirmative outreach when finding new tenants for the site. And goal 7 was to minimize financing from the city. Lastly, goal 8 was for a timely project delivery. And then we've got some prompts here for discussion. I've also included on the next couple of slides a snapshot of the pipeline of affordable housing we have currently, and then a summary with all the goals on one slide, in case that's easier.
Yeah, this slide right here is by request of the mayor, just to get, I assume, to get an understanding of what's coming or what's here as far as the mix. As you can see, lots of rental units, not many ownership units. AMIs, area median income, so that's the different set income restrictions for each of those projects. but just to help maybe support the conversation. Jump back to the questions. We can kick it here. But really the big question I think staff's trying to get at tonight is, these existing goals still relevant? They still make sense? And the following question would be, is this Sparrow site a priority still? That's also out there for debate, so.
So can you put the goals back up, the first goal?
Is that easier?
No, the other one, the full wording, because I do think that, yeah, that first goal doesn't make a lot of sense as it's worded, because, and there was the basic, lack of consensus that there was in 2029 on council was a tension between trying to serve the lower income, the 0 to 30%, or trying to create homeownership opportunities. And I do think we have to make a decision on that. Because, I mean, we were advised, and I will count on Joseph to correct me if I'm wrong about this, but we were advised by the staff at the time that 30%, meeting the needs of, or getting at a cost point that serves 30% or lower of area median income is not going to be homeownership. And it's also likely to really need wraparound services. Whereas going at a ownership model, you're gonna have more people that are not gonna need the extensive wraparound services, but need financial assistance to become homeowners. So I mean, I do think that's where I feel like that first goal is kind of trying to say too much or nothing at all. And I do think that's the question that we need to resolve. I mean, the rest of the goals seem fine to me, but that is the one that seems to pose a policy question for this group.
Mayor, for the benefit of us who weren't there, the lack of, I think I understand the divide, but when you say lack of consensus, what was it? I mean, it ended up being a goal, so was it 4-1, 3-2, what was it?
Well, I think it was 4-1 on the serving the lower income. And then there was this, like, let's throw in homeownership, even though we were told homeownership really isn't realistic if you're aiming to serve that lowest income threshold.
I would say that's still true.
The one thing I will say about the lower income from 0 to 30% that makes that challenging for that location is the need for wraparound services. And that space isn't really adequate for that. Even meeting with some of the affordable housing developers, it was a similar response was that it's, if you want to do that deep of affordability, you're going to need to provide wraparound services, and there's just not enough space there for that. Not saying that it can't be done, but that's a challenge that we have to consider is, what services are we going to be able to provide there? Not us as a city, but what services are, like, yeah, it's right off of McLaughlin. But there's really not much nearby. So you have to really establish a whole new system of care pretty much in that location. I'm not saying it can't be done. It's challenging. If it was a divide between the two, I would lean more towards the home ownership opportunities, because even looking at that last chart, there's a lack of that in Milwaukie. And I just want to clarify, because, there's still a stigma when it comes to affordable housing and home ownership opportunities, right? Just so people understand right now, if you were to purchase a $350,000 home, you couldn't make it unless you made at least the median home income of Milwaukie, at least. In some cases, probably not even that much. I mean, without putting an extraordinary amount down. So when we talk about affordable home ownership opportunities, I want to get that stigma out that it's Same thing with all the other low income, right? It's always about, it's, drug addicts and mental health right. But when we talk about home ownership, we talk about this stuff, that it's important to understand where everybody is coming from and how we meet people where they are. So I want to clarify that, because anytime you bring up affordable housing, there's some pushback. Because quote unquote, the terrible term that's used is riffraff, right? So I just want to clarify that the riffraff that some people may be referring to in homeownership opportunities are everyday Milwaukeeans who have jobs and who make a wage that doesn't give them an opportunity to afford anything more than that. So they're family members, they're families, they're mothers and fathers with kids. And so it's just important to remember that when we discuss these things. But I just feel like for the lack of what we currently have in the inventory, I think the homeownership opportunity would be more beneficial. Considering that we got 15 coming online.
I really appreciate you saying that, Adam. I would agree, Councilor Kusterbadi. It is, these programs serve the average Milwaukeean, and we have a lot of backfill that we have to do as a city. One, I guess, some questions with the criteria. I am a little bit confused about what we get with the unit size goal there. Why specify that in the plan?
So we got a letter today from Joanne Bird, who talked about how it was first talked about as homeless, addressing homeless families in the school district, and that is true. It's the whole conversation around the time the city first acquired it. So the idea is family-sized units.
Yeah. If we don't have that included in our other goals, I don't know why. I just worry being too prescriptive in our goals here, if we lose something, especially with 8 different goals, if we lose something by spelling out exactly what each unit must look like, how many toilets, how many bedrooms, how many closets. And so I wonder, I could be wrong, but do we need to include that there, or is that overly prescriptive?
It's a good comment. I mean, it's a great comment for you all to consider. It's certainly, from a staff perspective, challenging. Based on these 8 goals, it's going to be challenging to make that pencil and to get a developer to make it happen in all those different levels. That's definitely a consideration. It doesn't mean we don't try. Part of the reason that we're here tonight is if these are what you all think are still true for Sparrow, we can go cast and see what we get, or we see what we don't get, and then we can adjust from there too.
But is that goal prescriptive? It says preference.
In 2 or 3 bedroom, that's not discussing closets and.
And I've seen it also, family size housing, which then you're not putting a number on it, but it's not studio and 1 beds effectively. I'm not the expert here, but I think I've seen some RFPs that are, preference for family sized housing, which then does kind of get to that idea, but it's not trying to prescribe what things look like or the size of them, but it's what need is it filling?
Okay.
I do appreciate that, though, because you don't want to restrict, if you can get 20 units.
Yeah.
Right, and there's, or 15, but the extra 5 are like single occupancy or starter.
Yep.
I see the limit, but the preference does kind of.
I have another comment that might be an uphill battle. Goal number 3, I'm not a huge fan of, and I think I would want to see a reframe in this. It's something that we see a lot in the construction industry. AGC, the Association of General Contractors, often pushes the idea that what matters most when we work with contractors is the person who owns the contracting firm. And I think the reframe that we see a lot in the construction industry is it's less important who owns it and who gets the paycheck in the end than the workers who are serving the project and the people who are by and large the people doing the work, the way they're paid, the benefits that they get. And so I think if we want to really target uplifting folks who are minorities and women, I would rather not focus on the boss who owns the company, but the worker who does it, and either shift to a company that pays prevailing wage and full family benefits, or something about workforce percentages down in the actual workforce. So more of a worker-led metric than something that looks at the owner of the firm.
Isn't there
Is that measurable? I mean, is that something we can do?
So we can, so I can think to the point that we were talking about with Excise, we can add preference into these. This can be part of the scoring. You have to make it. If you can show, prove that goal, or any goal, and you can actually hit it, then you score high. But if you can't hit it, then yeah, that's gonna put you down on the list. So there's ways to put it out there. I don't know. I don't know if I don't know how to word that yet in my head.
There are some examples in state law that we've used that I could send out. Maybe I'll bring it up in a report and then we can all talk about that. But I could send it to folks to see a suite of options that we could look at.
Don't we have some verbiage in that about, with our equity goals?
We have in the updated procurement guidelines, I was just trying to pull them up, language around, COVID certification.
COVID,
I can't
right.
remember
Yeah,
what
that's more for
exactly, if it's
hiring.
preference for
More
COVID
for
certification or
employees.
additional points awarded for COVID certification, but that's,
Things into that account, right? Employees,
that's, yeah.
who they hire and the hiring practices.
Does it? It's not just the owner?
No, I don't think so.
COVID
'cause
certification.
I don't think so.
Bandy's
Is it the owner? I thought it was more about the hiring,
It's gotta be owned
the
51% or greater.
Yeah.
Share of the company is owned by someone from the population in question.
oh wow, I don't know why I thought that was.
And that, the beauty in that program is that it's certified. So with workforce, with staff turnover and whatnot, it's been, I believe, hard for us to put teeth on our RFP language or our contracts about if you say you've got this diverse workforce, but then everyone quits and now you have a new workforce, like, I don't know. But if you've got examples, I think that
I
would be
can look at
really
examples, and one way that we'll do this at the state level is we'll look at requirements for kind of roundabout requirements where you require less the like ownership model and more the benefits that are paid. So it matters. I think the argument would be it doesn't matter who owns the firm if they're paying all of their workers a substandard wage. I mean, we are going to talk later tonight about wages paid in Clackamas County. And so you could change it and say, what matters most is that you pay a prevailing wage to your employees in the hopes that it serves folks in a more equitable way. It's a reframe. But then we can also bring, I know there are apprenticeship standards and other standards that I could bring forward and show like a suite of options. So all that to say, maybe we look at a few options and maybe we keep this, maybe we adopt something else.
I would also suggest that this not be overly prescriptive because
Yeah.
I have experience in this.
Yeah.
On the contracting side.
Yeah.
And these kind of requirements are terribly difficult to meet.
Yeah.
In this area, due to a lot of reasons, demographics, union membership,
Yeah.
all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I just put that out as a word of caution so you don't
Yeah.
paint yourself into a corner.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Well, the best part about that is the more is goals as opposed to requirements. So that helps, gives us some flexibility. 'Cause that's a good point. It can be tough to meet each one.
So there's some interest, I guess I'm trying to gauge kind of where we are on that one.
On number 3.
Yeah. Well, and I guess all of them still, right?
Well, maybe we need to,
We're still
Still in
discussing.
discussion phase, and then we'll kind of try to summarize, synthesize, see where the nods are.
I was just going to suggest that perhaps some of the language around a goal could be a focus on a project leadership agreement or project labor agreement that reflects, equity goals. And
Yeah.
then your goal language is actually just really plain.
Yeah.
But it's the PLA that dictates what you're looking to see in the outcomes for your contract.
Yeah.
Does that sound like it might be a compromise?
I think so. Yeah, something in a PLA or some type of preference for folks who sign a PLA.
so explain, I don't know how that gets used. So how does that get
Well,
used?
So we have a project labor agreement between like the city and the general contractor.
After you've gone through the RFP process, or it's part of the RFP
I
package?
think I don't know, actually. I think
gotta be both.
it's got to like simultaneously. So you need to be clear about what you're looking for so that they can respond appropriately. But then also that's kind of like when we, have a good neighbor agreement, we each kind of outline the things that we'll put in good faith. I'm probably simplifying it too much, but, so within that, you could actually negotiate, and that would be with the general contractor, like what your expectations would be for subcontractors or for, like employee percentages or things along those lines. And then it gives you the ability to kind of scale that too, based on the size of the project or the uniqueness of a skill set. So if we know that, I guess it also sort of puts a little bit more responsibility on us as an organization to support things like entrepreneurial or apprenticeship programs and things like that as part of the mix of what we're looking for. So, I don't know, I guess it's.
And
I
how
guess what
does
I'm
it work if we're not contracting with the general contractor? We're letting an RFP to a developer who's contracting with the general contractor.
Yeah.
So how does that?
Well, we'd still own the land, right? So I guess it would be the agreement that we have with the developer.
Could be part of the disposition and development agreement. And can also, you make a good point too. This could also lead to transfer of property ownership too. I don't know if that was ever talked about at previous city council conversations, but that's certainly a reason to not talk about
Oh, I
it.
think that was kind of assumed, just the same way at Cocoa Point. It was just,
Okay.
it's understood.
Maybe to take a stab at, for you, Joseph, asking for clarity on this, some change language, maybe the unit size would be changed to like preference for units that serve families, or Emma had good language there, so it's a less prescriptive, but still the same intent, units that serve families. And maybe that first goal gets shifted to something about like increasing the supply of affordable home ownership opportunities in the city, or I think it has to do,
Well, do we have consensus on that?
Yeah.
I think that's the
Do we
first
wanna take
question.
one, should we go kind of one by one?
Yeah.
Okay, so the proposal I've heard on the table for changing number one would be kind of get rid of this sort of tension there between very low income and ownership. And the proposal I've heard is something like, a project will increase the supply of affordable home ownership opportunities. I haven't heard a proposal for what AMI you'd want to put there, and maybe that's back on staff as a recommendation. Would affordable homeownership be in that 80% AMI?
I would recommend if we're doing homeownership, a homeownership model, I would say 80%, especially if you want to stay low, not do workforce to the 100 or 120%. I would say 80%, and then even throw out 60% if you wanted to continue to try to see if you can get anybody interested.
I want to remind people, and Will wasn't here then, but when we were doing the housing production strategy, it became clear that 80% of AMI is 100% of Milwaukie median,
Very much,
right? So 60% of AMI is 80%,
Right.
more or less, of Milwaukie median.
Thank you, Mayor.
So if you were leaning towards home ownership model, I would say throwing out preference of 80% with preference of 60%. That would be something along those lines.
Because even 80, that's 100, Milwaukee's only 70 something. That's still low. The average Milwaukeean still can't afford the average sale price of a house in Milwaukee right now. So yeah.
So do I have nods on adjusting this?
Ask a question.
Yes, absolutely.
How would that change if we were able to bring a land banking model?
A land trust
What
model?
into the mix?
Land trust or land banking model?
I don't know that it changes much, but my experience is limited with land trust
Well,
models.
the price of the home would go down because you're not factoring in the land. So, so then ideally you would be able to meet a lower, percent. because then they're just investing in the house, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, you cap it at 80. Like you wouldn't go above that.
So just to
Like,
give an
like Dev
example.
Northwest is 80. That's what they set it as. The ones that, the 12 they're building right outside Milwaukie is at 80% AMI, which is about 100% of.
That seems to be common, sorry.
Well, whether it's 60% or 80%, I think what Rebecca is saying, if you go toward the leasehold model, then you remove a significant cost, no matter whether you're going 60 or 80. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how they do it anyways. Even with the community land trust, it's 80. It's like typical.
Yeah, the short stack Milwaukie, that's what Proud Ground, that's 80%.
Also, I liked your formulation of 80% with a preference for 60.
The goal could read,
Up to 80.
or the goal of the project would be to increase the supply of home ownership units that serve households making 60 to 80% AMI with a preference for 60%.
Or a preference for the lowest possible or whatever, yeah.
Well, I don't want us to lose the land trust issue. Where does that get rolled in? Is that not a goal? Is it more in the details? I don't know.
This goes back to what the mayor was saying about the assumption that this would be like Coho and once developed would no longer be owned by the city. So can you talk a little bit about that in the process for lay people? I mean, how would this work? So we do an RFP for a developer. When do we sell the land if in that assumed scenario?
So it depends on what we want this to look like. So it sounds like from previous discussions, this was going to be, we were going to do an RFP, not sell the property, but make that as an incentive to developing it. And then the developer could do whatever they wanted to do with the property. I would still be a fan of doing anything along those lines, whether it's conveying that property to the developer or suggesting that it needs to be part of a land trust, not that we manage, but like a Proud Ground, an organization that does this for a living does. That either can be part of an RFP. So the first origination or the comment about this in general, the RFP, when we first talked about it years ago, when I got here, was that it was going to be giving away the land as part of it. But if we want to do a land trust model, we can certainly add that to.
Well, if we did an RFP that provided preference points for a land bank model or a land trust model,
Yeah.
wouldn't that work? Then it doesn't preclude anyone from applying, but you get preference points if you bring in a proposal that's closer to the goals that we want to see. I mean, the alternative would be that we just go out to bid for land trust and see what happens, but there's only really 3 shows in town.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Could you help me understand? I think implicit in that is that a land trust model is better. And I think the reason for that would be it can allow us to sell the units for cheaper. But would we not capture that already by saying we have a preference for 60% AMI?
Not
Or-
necessarily, because if you have a land trust or a land banking model,
Yeah.
then you're controlling the long-term affordability of those units.
I see that, yeah.
Because the land isn't factored into the total price of the house when it changes hands. So you keep the land as a public or a nonprofit asset, and that piece of the financial equation is just taken out. And then you're just basically, when you sell the home, you're just selling the structure.
Think of it like a condo in a way.
Okay. So the difference is the 60% AMI goal that we have there is a point in time, or for the 30 years that is bounded, land trust would be much
Well,
longer.
Typically, it's
Given-
99 years.
Given the trajectory of home costs
Yeah.
in Milwaukee, I would say that we'd have a greater likelihood of meeting a lower AMI percentage over time
Yeah,
if we utilized a model like a land trust or a land bank.
that's it. Thank you.
You know, the more I'm hearing us talk about this, and moving to ownership, land trust makes the most sense, honestly. It really does. I don't know how we would convey the land and then So figure out a way, since a condominium, yeah, I don't know. I think the land trust model would make sense, given the direction that's being talked about.
Yeah, because if you convey you can parcelize the land and have the developer sell them off at a affordable price point, but
Right.
you have no control after the first sale, whereas the land trust model, you have the continuing.
It's ran by
This would be
nonprofit.
Our council making a policy decision to try to control affordability long-term as much as we possibly can. And for a city that is largely built out, it's very difficult to control the market rates of the stock that we have. And we're trying to do more infill, or, trying to get really creative, but we don't have the option of expanding right now. So it seems like this would have to be a policy decision that we would make.
The city, I know we're working with Proud Ground on some other, but those are privately owned parcels.
Yeah.
We have never done an RFP to a land, or engaged kind of a land trust model.
No, this would be our first.
Before letting then an RFP, would the council want kind of more education or a further discussion maybe with an expert on that model, so that we're informing sort of how, I'm hearing kind of a growing number of nods for pursuing that model, but maybe before we just say, yeah, that's what we're gonna put in it and we prepare the resolution for you to adopt, we have a little more of a
Due diligence.
discussion on that.
I can invite Dev Northwest to come talk.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But I have nothing against them as an individual, but if we're looking at going out to a bid, we don't want to provide priority access to anyone. So I would say we either have someone that is a neutral entity that can talk about the model, or we invite all three or four, entities in town.
I would say Jamie Ledesma could be a good, she's a developer who's worked with land trust models.
But isn't employed by any of them.
No, yeah, she's her own.
Could I ask, I love your idea about doing a study session or something to talk more about a land trust model. I feel like there's consensus to try something like this even without that. Why not go ahead with the RFP and then also do it? Justin says no, absolutely, a legal nightmare.
I think it's just the due diligence. So you're doing the RFP, you're kind of, you're at least making the good faith offer that you're going to be entering into this agreement. And I just think it's the first time the city would be doing one of these things. We just want to make sure we dot the i's.
He nods a lot more when you talk, that's.
I would also add that this might not be the only opportunity that we have to look at.
Well said.
I hope not.
So if we are thinking about this as an affordability policy that we're moving toward, then we should look at it comprehensively, which includes all of the scattered sites that Clackamas County has. That we might then not be the landowner or even the one that transfers the land, but if Clackamas County has similar values around this, then we would be an advocate for them to move that direction. And then that would be in line with, this overall policy. So it seems like we do need to discuss what the parameters of that policy would look like.
So you'd have to tie in a land banking component to it. So you would have to. I'm not saying that we would be the ones to purchase the land, but because we're all built out, so the only way to do that is to acquire land when it's available.
So, yeah. It does seem like there's consensus for the ownership model to switch from rental to,
I'm hearing
Yeah.
consensus there.
that's, okay, that's good.
On unit size, the current kind of idea I've heard on the table is, maybe reducing some specificity there and instead something around family size, or eliminating this altogether and seeing what is proposed and what pencils.
Again, it's a preference.
So it's not prescriptive. And family size, I guess, is my preference.
Well, I will say part of the reason the city got a great price from TriMet on the property was that we said we were looking to serve homeless families.
Yeah.
So I'll just put that out there. That is the dialogue that happened with the neighborhood. That is the dialogue that happened with TriMet. We were trying to serve families.
Okay, so that preference Seems okay then?
On 3, this is the one where we discussed maybe changing it to talk less about the MWBE firms and something more about the development agreement or PLA. I didn't quite capture what the recommendation is. Maybe Counselor Stavanger has brilliant words to.
Oh, I don't know if I have brilliant words
Well, I
tonight.
was gonna say, and maybe a few of you who know this work can noodle on that, and I don't know that we all need to wordsmith that, since we all don't have the
Yeah,
background in that.
fair point. I guess, what's the goal for the goal? Like,
Yeah.
that's maybe a better way to go.
The goal would be, in my opinion, that the overall contracting process and tools within that process would reflect our goals around equity.
Which means,
Which means that when we develop or we enter into an agreement or a contract for the development of this, that we look at the groups that are negatively impacted or not included in the traditional path, and create space for those groups to be involved. And it can include this language, it could include things that Councillor Anderson is talking about, but I don't think that that level of specificity needs to be included at this level. This could actually just point to our commitment to equity and contracting.
Yeah.
Equity and contract.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree. That's a good way for them to supply a narrative and how they're
Yeah.
meeting it. Great. Tree canopy, I feel like this is gonna be really,
Pretty easy, yeah.
difficult one to get through. Yeah, we all agree that keeping trees is great. Sustainable design,
Easy.
affirmative outreach, seems. I should keep interjecting. Thoughts?
well, so that ties into, I mean, that's the
It does.
flip side of the development of it, employing people, but also
Marketing.
the marketing of it, reaching
Uh-huh.
people, reaching potential buyers.
The one that I think about, if we are trying something new and bold with a land trust model, do we have to tweak number 7 at all? Or like, is our understanding there different, or can we maintain it?
I think that's a good goal.
Yeah,
But yeah.
Like, if we still own the asset, does that not implicate us financially in some ways, or like?
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is why we have to get smarter, because I think when we're saying land trust models,
We wouldn't
we wouldn't own it.
We wouldn't own it.
I
That's the
think,
thing, yeah,
I
normally
think,
nonprofit
jurisdictions
entity would
don't
end
And
up
I-
owning the land.
and I
If we-
think right now, with the level of conversation we've had about our own budget and our own staffing resources, we are not prepared to say we're ready to take on being a
Landowner and some, yeah,
Yeah.
landlord and maintenance, a lot of other parts of that.
But that was why I was suggesting a higher level policy and commitment to, to that model.
Yes.
Finding opportunities for that model, but not necessarily administering the model. But in the position of financing, I mean, this is like, if we went out to bid for, developers that had expertise in a community land trust model or operated land trusts and had that expertise, then upon their financing for the development of the project, we could specify that then the land transfers to their ownership. And I don't think that Milwaukie would be involved in any of the financing at that point. But
Again,
when they actually get the sign off from underwriters and they have the financing for their project, then that's enough trust, I think, at that point to say, okay, you're good for the development.
Yeah.
And just to not overcomplicate, we're not the first jurisdiction to try this. This has been done before.
Sure. Yeah, I would say it's probably rare for a city our size, though. I would probably go that far.
Yeah, but I'm just saying the structure of it is
Definitely.
probably going to be very similar. And all
this-
land trusts the land trusts are usually governed by a board of nonprofit and community members. It's usually not the municipalities that are involved in that.
That was called out in the staff report, this site has constraints, access constraints. I was actually the Dev Northwest guy and looked at the utilities and said there's water and sewer right there, which was, I was pleasantly surprised by. But, you know, I do think, we've got the brownfield cleanup, we've got, you know, so there, you know, I like the goal. I think we need to minimize, you know, what we're financing, but there may be pots of state money we can help people. We can either apply for, or we can help developers apply for to help with brownfield cleanup, to help if there is utility
This is great, Mayor.
need. And,
You just teed something up for me.
okay,
So we were just recently approached by the Housing Authority to pursue a HUD Pro grant. They need a local jurisdiction partnership to pursue it, and they're looking for funds for Hillside Phase 2, which, by the way, will likely include some home ownership
oh, really?
options.
Okay.
Yeah. They're already talking to a few, it's going to be a mix of developers and not just one, so it's going to be unique. They need a partner, and I said, love to, and they said, well, if you have a project you'd love to put in that part or that ask, how about Sparrow? Because we probably will need money to help create that access or develop the access to the infrastructure, because I don't know if a nonprofit's going to want to take that on. So helping them meet some of those requirements is going to be important. So I say that because, yeah, I agree with where you were going. And then also it's kind of like, would you all be okay with us moving forward with at least doing a partnership and asking HUD for some money with the county? And this would require a resolution that would come back to y'all, probably under consent, if there is a good buy-in. And it would be in, you know, probably like $1 million for Sparrow. It's kind of the thought.
$1 million of our money or $1 million of HUD money?
Grant.
Okay, yeah.
And it would be for specifically access, or kind of as a general site readiness?
Yep, site
kind of?
readiness, even develop, yeah, could
Yeah.
be used for, as long as it's affordable housing related.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. We never turn down asking.
But I gotta make the ask before I make the real ask, so thank you for that.
And on, back onto number 7, and the point you made, the great point you made, Mayor, I think this really was talking about just fiscal responsibility.
Yes.
Just really being as prudent with the city investment dollars here, which includes things like pursuing grants, which includes things like, you know, just making smart decisions.
Project delivery? Sure.
And I think that's one where we could tweak it after we learn more about land trust models to maybe say, either preference for firms that have experience delivering that model, or requirement that you will deliver this in a land trust model.
Good discussion. I feel like I got what I need. I want to just make
You
sure.
had other, okay.
Yeah, there are other, yeah, that's true.
There are, so let's look for the questions. The next agenda item on CET might also, you know, help, I mean, it'll definitely help inform the last question that's there. I do think it might also help inform the third question you have there. You know, we've got an action item from this to do a little bit more due diligence in the land trust model, but there's a bigger question there of sort of, are you ready to say go on Sparrow? Because there's a lot of things floating around right now in the housing and affordable housing space, and we can't say go on all of them. So we can keep this conversation going. We could also pivot to the CET conversation and then come back to those questions. But Mayor, that's your discretion.
Oh, well, I mean, we have 20 minutes left. I mean, I guess I'd like to discuss the third.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the scattered sites aren't yet in our, aren't in our control, I guess. And that's still an ongoing conversation. So I mean, I don't see that as a reason to slow down on Sparrow.
Yeah, I don't think that they will be in our control.
Yeah.
I think that we have the ability to influence the policy around their disposition.
Yeah.
And we have a good partner through the Housing Authority that has values aligned. So I would actually say it's not, I don't see that as a risk. I see it as an opportunity to align around policy. But we would need to articulate that policy as a council.
Well, and I think having this
Resolution, I think.
Land Trust 101 course we're gonna have, we'll inform that as well as it informs this, right?
Yeah, I think the question within the question too, and we don't have to answer it tonight, but it's just something to think about is, if things become head to head and there's competing resources, whether it be CET or staff resources, where does staff put more energy, time, money, resources? Is it continue to be Sparrow? Is it other things? Because we won't be able to do them all. We won't be able to do them all well, that's for sure. And so when we have to meet competing interests, some direction there about what makes the most sense and what council would like staff to throw more weight towards. That makes sense.
I think that the opportunity that provides greater homeownership, affordable homeownership, would be prioritized, in my opinion. So if the scattered sites is a portfolio of 18 individual sites and a collective, whatever, 10 acres or something like that, then we would look at how many people could be placed into housing if they were to purchase those homes, or if we were using any of the staff capacity to think about like raising a certain home on a larger lot to be able to create more density, and all of that is home ownership. I would say, the greater good would weigh out, but I don't know what others.
I guess I feel like city's owned this property a long time, and the community's been waiting for something to happen with it for a long time. So I feel like we need to move forward on this property.
But I think our community is also really hurting when it comes to the price points for homes.
Well, right. I mean, this
That's what
is,
this
this
does.
is about addressing that.
So what I'm saying is that if we are forced to compare this site and the number of homes that would be able to be built on it versus scattered sites, which we don't own, but we have an opportunity to align with the county, and the number of homes that could be provided on those properties, then I would say the greater number of affordable homes that can be purchased by Milwaukie residents would outweigh it.
But how much are we gonna be involved
Can I-
in that since the county owns that stuff, outside of just having discussions and bringing them?
Well, Joseph and I both serve on the Housing Advisory Board for the Housing Authority.
Yeah.
So that board advises on all of those decisions around repositioning and advises the county board. So I would say in terms of stakeholder advocacy, we actually have really good representation at that level.
Just looking more decision-making.
Could I clarify, to what degree do we need to hammer this down today? Can we just say, continue on working with Sparrow? And if it does come up that there is this opportunity, we can reevaluate when that comes up? Because I think right now we have an incomplete picture that we're kind of weighing, and we can still proceed on Sparrow without making this decision at this point. Is that fair to say, or is that?
Well, before we get on, I'm trying to get I think I'm kind of where Adam is. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, where do you get the most bang for your attention and resources? But I'm trying to understand what the staffed impact would be for the scattered sites. I'm not sure I understand. I don't really understand that being a huge, but to the person who doesn't have to do it, anything's possible, right? So tell me what the lift, kind of give me a feel for what you think the staff impact would be for the scattered sites.
Yeah, I don't have a good sense of that just yet. I think it would be partly exploring cost of those sites with the housing authority, and then also conveyance and figuring out also a plan for those sites. It's kind of twofold. It's purchasing or even supporting the purchase of. Actually, that's actually maybe a lower hanging fruit I would actually recommend now that I'm thinking about it.
And if any of those properties, they involve a restructuring of what is on that site. So let's say it's a half-acre site, and it has a single-family residential home with 2 bedrooms on it. If So if we were to work with the county and put that into a land trust, then it would provide one home. But if we were able to work with the county and with a developer to take that home down and be able to put 5 or 6 homes on, I don't know, maybe it's more than a half acre. But, to increase density, then we're actually increasing sixfold the amount
But is
of
it the
affordability.
staff, is it Milwaukie staff doing that work, or is it county staff?
I think that would be a drain on staff
That would be a
capacity.
planning
Yes.
department issue.
Yeah.
But
And
How long is that out for?
infrastructure.
I think it's out for another 18 months-ish, or maybe.
So could we potentially, in the meantime, it's not taking up a lot of staff time, so in the next 18 months, could we move forward on getting this established and then, because I would hate to not do anything for 18 months.
Yeah. I guess, yes, Councilor Cosrati, I think the short answer is yes. I think the other side is exploring possibilities. If there was a desire to pursue scattered sites, I would say figuring out the options for what that means, because as far as staff time, we could use CET dollars to support the purchase of those properties with a nonprofit entity who does land trusts or does affordable housing. That's how we keep that affordable housing intact, because as I understand it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor Stafford, is that there's also properties that are going to go market rate. So we're going to lose that income restricted housing to some degree. So love to keep that housing stock around.
I think that HUD has some parameters around maintaining affordability. But I would have to look into that a little bit more. I think that's part of the repositioning application.
Well,
And I think, Councilor Kosarabadi, just to answer your question, I don't think, we are proposing do nothing for 18 months.
No,
But it's,
I don't mean it like that.
but I think trying to keep both of these trains moving at the same pace isn't practical. And so I think it's just more, we can really throw the weight of Joseph, like our one housing staff person, behind really seeing what we can do. Because I think, yes, there's 18 months left on the scattered sites repositioning process, but we have to be engaging now if what we're wanting to do is get to that outcome. So it's that, or it's really throw our weight behind Sparrow. In the latter, if we throw our weight behind moving Sparrow forward, doesn't mean Joseph and Councilor Savage aren't engaged in the scattered sites piece. It's just not, maybe with that being Milwaukee's vision of where we're coming to the table with a lot of resources and energy to try to make those into big affordable ownership.
Thanks. Thank you, Emma. I agree, and I would just say, I think part of the reason this came up, and I even prefaced the question, we don't have to solve it tonight, but just thinking down the line is if, when it comes to resources at some point, if we're going to continue to pursue Sparrow, if we do get in a place where scattered sites make some sense financially, resource-wise, we might have to make some decisions when it comes to money, and where we place money and where we don't. So I think that's, because these conversations are starting to get some momentum, it's important to start having that conversation internally with yourself, and then hopefully we'll have it out at some point. Does that make sense?
yeah, I guess, just in the interest of time and getting on, because we kind of are dovetailing into the CET discussion anyway. So maybe we should turn to that. I did want to put on the table just one other question, and we don't need to answer it tonight, but Councilor Kosrabadi has come to us with various ideas for building types. We talked about the 3D printing, we talked building types and ways to make the actual buildings built there more affordable, less costly to build.
Materials mostly.
And is that something we would put into, and how would we do that? And I guess that is, like I said, I don't want to get into the weeds on that tonight, but I just wanted to make sure we were not losing that thread of the conversation about those goals.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
I'd say to this point, I think what matters most is creating the affordable units. And if those materials or those alternative pathways are a way to reduce the cost, absolutely. But I think that larger goal of affordability that we've already built in kind of solves for that. If you can prove the case that 3D printing will be cheaper, absolutely. But if it is more expensive, then it kind of is precluded by the first goal, if that makes sense.
Okay,
Okay.
great. I'm gonna jam through this.
Why?
Yeah, thanks, Minnie. So, hello again. I was asked to give a quick overview of the CET, construction excise tax. So, I'm gonna jump right in. For those that aren't too aware or don't have the background, council adopted the construction excise tax back in 2017, and I'll say it's actually, it was pretty progressive at the time, and it certainly still is. Not many cities, I mean, there's definitely more cities that have adopted a CET, but it's still somewhat rare. What it is a 1% tax on any development over $100,000 in construction value. So if you're doing an addition on your house and it's $100,000, you're gonna have to pay $1,000 in construction excise tax. The revenues generally go towards affordable housing and economic development activities. So those are the two buckets. Speaking of buckets, so kind of a quick way of how we funnel money. When something comes in, it's essentially bifurcated into two buckets, one for affordable housing, one economic development. And so when you have a commercial permit come in, a commercial permit means, from a building code perspective, it means industrial, commercial, retail, things of that nature, but as well as multifamily. So it's big projects. When a developer comes in and pays their permits, it's based on construction value, and that those CET dollars are split 50-50. 50% of those go to economic development activities. The other 50% goes to affordable housing activities. All residential, so that's everything but outside of what I just spoke to, goes 100% into affordable housing activities. So primarily those are your plexes, your single family, single unit homes, single dwelling unit homes, as well as your additions. So those are two buckets, and I'll come back to those again. Since the code was adopted, we haven't touched the economic development activities dollars, but we have touched the affordable housing dollars. And so affordable housing is roughly defined as incentivizing construction development related programming for affordable housing. It's very broad in a sense. And so what we did is last year, an affordable housing grant program, which provided $2 million, 1.5 or 1.7 went to Hillside, phase one, which helped support 275 units at 30% and 60% AMI, and then 300,000 to Short Stack Milwaukie, which is a program land trust model, which provides some ownership, 15 units of ownership, which is that bottom picture. Back to the buckets, because I think that's probably what most people are concerned about or really interested in. As of today, the fund balances for each of those buckets are as follows. Roughly $445,000 in the affordable housing incentives bucket or activities bucket, and then 819 in the ECDev bucket. Quite a bit for the ECDev. Current staff recommendations for the affordable housing funds that are in that one bucket is to support the development of Sparrow site. Obviously, that's still up for debate. We kind of started talking about some other things, but that was the current recommendation. For the ECDev funds, as I've spoken to council before, as well as planning commission, mirroring what we've done in the URA to allow businesses outside of the URA to pursue tenant improvement, storefront improvement programs, as well as pre-development assistance, as well as put some funds aside or dedicate a lot of funds to developing hubs. Pre-development assistance is certainly going to be helpful for hubs activity, because if anybody wants to do conceptual, do some architecture, do some engineering, that's where those funds can come in pretty handy. So that's the quick, fast breakdown with 5 minutes left of CET. And I'm going to leave it here.
Is the 443, that's what's in it right now, right? Is that accounting for all the current development or upcoming permits or anything like that?
That is what has been already
There.
already there. So
And do they pay them at time of getting permits or time of occupancy?
time of permits.
Time of permits.
Yep.
Okay.
How quickly does that bucket fill up? Because I saw, I mean, you discussed in the packet that we just spent a good chunk of money on 2 projects. And I guess part of what I'm wondering is that we look at these funds as if it's better to save up to do larger expenditures or to have small programs that chip away at that.
It's a great question, Counselor. I think it's proportional to development, so
Fair.
it's kind of hit or miss. It's been really hot over the last couple of years. It can certainly slow down in the coming years.
You gave a great non-answer. I would say, based on the development that we had, like, how long did it take us to get to where we were before we gave the grants? How long?
So 2017 is when we started. We spent $2 million in that affordable housing bucket. So, roughly, what is that? Since 2003. So it's roughly 5-6 years that it took us to get 2.5 million in that residential bucket.
So is it fair to say if we continue to have hot development every 5 years, maybe we have around 200 million? Or sorry, 200.
Yeah, just a ballpark. Maybe I'm a little reluctant to give you a good answer just because it depends on interest rates. It depends on, we've been building out a lot of our vacant land, so we're gonna have less of that. So the juice is gonna get squeezed more and more.
I mean, we have Coho coming, and otherwise Hillside is affordable, so it's not paying in.
Murphy site.
There aren't so many big, so what I learned from this, I was hoping, like you, that more money was coming in. Because I did want to think about land banking as opposed to land trusts. Land banking, meaning buying land. We know there are some parcels for sale in town or coming for sale. Some on our eastern border, not in town. And did we have any potential to buy some of these parcels? And it's pretty clear the answer is no. Not in the near term.
On $2024, right?
I mean, we're flexible though in what we can use the funds, like just because we don't have enough now. Like in like 4 years, if we do, we could say, hey, we have X amount of dollars, maybe we revisit.
Sure, but there are properties that are gonna turn over in the
Yeah.
next couple of years that are, we aren't in a position to buy.
Yeah, a couple of things, and I've mentioned this before, that we can use that money for based on the bill is rental assistance and down payment assistance. Those are 2 things that we can use. The rental assistance, this is in conjunction with what Councilor Stavanger has already done. She's got $400,000 in grant money to provide rental assistance to Milwaukeeans and people whose children go to school in Milwaukee. It's a 2-year, it's gonna cover for 2 years. Maybe we look at funding that another year or 2. Maybe, we want to keep that rental assistance going since we don't have to administer that.
Well, we may also still be able to keep tapping into SHS dollars.
Yeah, right. But I'm just saying, in the idea that we can't, like, just as a potential that could
I
be
think
used
we
for that.
will have no trouble spending the money.
Yeah. Well, it's just on what we spent.
But you're right, yeah.
The down payment assistance, again, we're just talking about home ownership. The down payment can be a really big chunk of change. Down payment
Revolving
is
loan
money,
program.
cost of the financing, and being able to put out, 5 to 10 grand worth of grants can go a long way for people. Like I mentioned in the previous discussion, I've talked to a local lender and a local escrow company that's willing to match $500 to $7,500 in grant money.
Yeah.
So if we did something like that,
Yeah.
where we're not putting up 30 grand, right? But we're putting up, 5 to 10, and they'll screen them. The local lender will do the screening to where they'll let us know this person fits the bill. They have to meet certain criteria. They have to go to home ownership classes. They have to get owning a home certification. There's certain things that they have to be able to complete before they get that. But then they could match it, and you're looking at potentially 15 to 30 grand worth of funds for somebody to purchase a home.
Kind of considering your point in the abstract, I think we have a question as a council. With that money there, do we want to, the way that we've used funds so far, and correct me if I'm wrong, has been larger allocations for 2 large projects. Do we want to pursue grants or other programs that maybe are smaller in scale but are more sustained and happen more frequently? Or do we want to continue to squirrel away money for a big land banking opportunity or some other big project? Is that an accurate framing?
Yeah, I think that's definitely, that's the kind of fun and also the challenge here, right? Is that
But I
We
guess,
can do anything, we
Yeah.
can't do everything.
Yeah, right. It's,
well, I guess I'd want to have, I mean, this is obviously not something we'll resolve in this session, but I want to have a better understanding of what's available at the state level that we're not replicating, that we can funnel if there are these kind of, that we're not replicating things that are already available at the state
Right.
level, that we can just be helping funnel people to.
Actually, that's a good point, because I did get a list of all the state, all the nonprofits that the state had, that has been allocated funding for down payment assistance programs. So if that's not something that, an avenue we go through, maybe we partner with them and provide them an opportunity to get to know Milwaukeeans, right? And open that resource to Milwaukeeans.
right.
There's also, I actually met with an individual from a credit union, in Bold Credit Union, and they have a rental program, actually. And that program it's basically like a rental loan that covers your first months and your deposit, so people don't have to come out of pocket for that. And it's a very low interest loan, and it's up to like $5,000. And it helps people because it covers that. And then now they got money to buy their furniture, get their home, make their home a home. And it's a very interesting program. The issue that they've been having is that they don't have a lot of people that qualify because the debt to income is over 55%. So my thought to the bank was maybe there's a way that the ones that don't qualify because of DTI, maybe they're willing to go 50% to 2,500, and maybe the city, if they're Milwaukie residents, can go the other 25% for those people that don't meet the DTI. So it lowers the bank's risk. Instead of $5,000, they're putting up half, and then we're still able to get people into these rentals at the very least. Partnering with some of these organizations would probably
Yeah.
do well too.
I personally, I love the ideas. They're all great. And I have experience with quite a few of those. And the city itself has run a rental assistance program through Northwest Housing Alternatives that was pretty successful. The difference with the rental assistance is that you don't get that money back. Sometimes revolving loan funds through like a first-time home buyer is pretty great because you continue to fill up those funds and the pool of funds and keep using it. But good thoughts.
Given where we're at on time, maybe I can summarize what action items I did take out of the Sparrow in this conversation and see if that sounds good, as next steps. Does that work? I also note that when we kind of did our swim lanes and our sort of hot topic leads, Councilor Costa-Rabati was identified as the sort of hot topic lead for Sparrow. So as I go through these, I can talk about maybe ways that staff can work with Councilor Costa-Rabati as sort of the liaison to move things forward before we bring it back for the discussion. But so on the Sparrow piece, we got good feedback and some consensus over some revision of goals, I think. Starting to think of that project as one that increases the supply of homeownership, 60 to 80% AMI, preference for the lowest possible, preference for the land trust model, but we want to, we're gonna look for time on an upcoming agenda to bring some experts in to talk to us and get us smarter about that. Some other changes that, we can work on writing up and making sure that that's circulated to council, things around equity requirements, a little higher level statement on that. And higher level statement on fiscal responsibility and on unit size, a focus more on family size. But I don't think we are prepared yet, let me know if I'm wrong, to bring back a resolution adopting new goals for the site, because we'd like to have the land trust kind of expert conversation first. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, great. We got the green light to proceed on the HUD pro grant, and that will come back to you as a resolution when that is prepared. And then, on the CET piece, I heard an action item that staff can work on getting a better understanding of, given all the ideas that are out on the table, understanding what is available through other funding sources, the state level, the federal level, so that we kind of know where the gap is to really inform where we go next. I don't think we have clear consensus yet on scattered sites versus Sparrow. I think what we can keep doing is sort of engaging at the level we have been, but based on this conversation, I don't think we're igniting any additional work on Sparrow right now. And Joseph and Councilor Schavinger will continue to engage on the scattered sites conversations through their HAB seats. Is that accurate?
I think that sounds good. I would say, do we have consensus on extending the commercial development bucket, extending the URA grants to the rest of the city? Personally, I'm fine with that idea. I've heard from one business that was grumbling because
Oh, yes.
he was not eligible to apply.
I guess I have a question about oversight. The MRCAC is involved in not direct oversight, but advisory to the funds that go toward the URA, storefront improvement, tenant improvement. Does this mean that the MRCAC would be advisory to this process, or would this go straight to council, or what's the? What
I
would that
think
mean?
per the charter of the MRCAC, I bet that's pretty URA specific.
Right.
But what I think we could do is we have a conversation with you as city council, not as your MRC position, to say, would you like to apply just all those same values that you adopted there over into this? It is in Joseph's signing authority. It's actually mine, but I delegated to him to sign those grants. So that I think would be the same piece. So I think probably the next step on that would be another council agenda item to basically say, here, we're preparing to basically launch that same program citywide. When we have our hubs discussion, our hubs phase 3 discussion on October 1st, I think we can continue part of this conversation because there's
Yes.
an economic development funding component or potential of that sort of scope. So that might help us move this forward. But that'd be I wouldn't say that MRCAC would say they're administering or oversight of those, because I wouldn't want to get in any, now they're doing things outside of the
URA.
URA. Yeah.
I'd agree.
I mean, I think they've created, they and staff have created the structure, and then, just the reporting on how many applications and what's going out the door comes to council. Yeah, I don't think we need a committee in between.
Good question, actually. Speaking of that.
Yeah.
I remember we talked about making it retroactive, but it's only retroactive to January 1st of this year.
Correct.
I thought we made it retroactive to.
You're going to have more time to talk about this on the MRC agenda tonight. So I'm
Okay.
just in the interest of time. That's a great question that I think we should talk about during the MRC meeting.
Sweet.
The last thing I'd say on that too, before we just say, yeah, we're going ahead with these grants, is administering an $820,000 grant program as one individual. So we're gonna have to put some parameters on just sort of how much and how big we're rolling that out.
Sure.
And what staffing might need to accompany that, and that could be part of your goals conversation too.
I mean, Joseph's got a lot of time on it.
So much.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right,
Joseph.
we're adjourning from the work session, be back at 6:30.
I have watermelon in my garden in the fridge.
Wow.
It's got seeds though, so it's not that good, but it's the first one I harvested.
I have a bunch of these things.
Oh.
I'm gonna put them in the little
Yeah, I got,
back there. Will not